AI specialist Fernando Gamallo shares how businesses of any size can use AI to streamline your business. This is episode 13 of the Tech Leaders Talk Show. Hey, I'm your host Ernst Pelser on the Tech Leaders Talk Show. In the show, we chat with technology leaders who are experts in the field. Our aim is to help businesses understand and adopt technology to solve business challenges. Plus, join our free Facebook group to join the ongoing technology discussion, share your ideas, help others, and post questions. Search for Tech Leaders Talk on Facebook and I'll see you there. So we have a fantastic show for you guys today. Fernando was most recently featured in the Forbes magazine for his work in AI. Fernando helps us understand how businesses can use AI and how to get the leadership team on board. At the end of the show, we introduce our new competition, so stick around. I start the show by asking Fernando how he got started with AI and why specifically he chose AI. So Fernando, how did you get involved in AI firstly? Because you come from an infrastructure background, so there's quite a big shift to get involved with AI. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Oh, great. Very interesting story. Very beginning when I was pretty much interested in infrastructure, but after a few years, I started running small business projects from warehousing and logistics. And after we complete successfully a migration of a warehouse from one location to another location, I figured out that there was a lot of data in that project. And we could start using that amount of data in order to understand times and movement of the warehouse. So I pretty much say that particular project changed my mind from infrastructure to data-oriented guy.
Does that mean that you decided, okay, now I'm going to go ahead and start studying AI, or was it a case of, okay, I'm going to use my leadership skills and to implement AI projects?
In fact, I would like to say that from my perspective, before understanding AI, I start with data, analyzing data, understanding data, getting highlights from data. And that was my first move. When I understood the complexity of data in general terms, talking in general terms, because for each project it could be changed dramatically. But in general terms, when you understand what data is and how it can be exploited, how can it be managed or enhanced sometimes, that was the very first part from me. Then I start working with several applications for dashboards, like business intelligence applications or a small business intelligence application, which in general terms is to get data and represent graphically the data. So I think that those are the main basic steps of AI. When you start doing that after some tries or some small projects, you start seeing that the data can be manipulated, data can be transformed into patterns or into formulas or into algorithms. And with that information, you start working with the very first steps of AI. So if I've made myself clear, my transformation from a traditional IT guy to a AI guy goes through the usage of data, then understanding patterns, then business intelligence, and then predictions, algorithms, and then more sophisticated tools to predict, to understand, or to learn. Machine learning, deep learning, and that stuff from AI.
So you just mentioned about those different phases, and I remember when we chatted before the show, you talked about those different phases before you actually get to AI. Can you talk a little bit through those phases and exactly why those phases are important?
Well, it really depends, because I would like to say that, first of all, what is intelligence from a human perspective? Intelligence is learning or understanding and using that knowledge to do something or to achieve some goals or to achieve something. In general terms, that is intelligence from a human perspective. And from a computer perspective, AI is pretty much the same. We have to learn, understand, and use exactly that in order to achieve some a very specific task. So in order to develop an AI project, I do recommend to, first of all, learn. What kind of learning? You need to understand prediction models, which are the most basic ones. We can use even Excel to do some kind of prediction models. And with that prediction models and with that data you are manipulating, you can learn. Then probably the second step is understanding, which I could make an analogy of machine learning, which is changing the rules of programming in order to take the answers and the data and the programming skills, everything mixed in order to generate automated models. That should be the second step. So the first one is to do some predictions. The second one is to do some machine learnings, an automated model to learn itself. And at the end, this suggests that probably AI or complex AI or advanced AI solutions could be. So I believe these are, in very general terms, three normal steps to go through the AI journey.
Okay. I think perhaps some examples would be really good to kind of cement that information. Can you give us some examples that you've worked with in the past or common examples that are used?
For sure. Let's do the following, for example. In order of prognostic or small prediction models, budgeting. A standard business process, which is budgeting, and you take probably results of 1 year. You have budget, and you create some curves, graphics in Microsoft Excel, for instance, where you can. There are several tools. Some very complex tools, some very simple tools. MATLAB or RapidMiner, or those tools can be really easy to use in order not to discuss complex programming languages. But you can do some projections using your budgets. So we use budgeting for budgeting purposes. We use a lot of projections, standard projections, which are normal curves from statistically. It means which is a standard deviation or which is a linear regression. You make a linear regression of a trend, and you can figure out what is going to happen. That is one example. Another example for machine learning, which is a little bit more complex. Imagine that you have your sales on a quarterly basis, for instance, from the last year, 2019, and this year, 2020. And you have your sales on a quarterly basis. So you put your sales on an algorithm, and every day or every month you have new sales. You put those new sales into that algorithm, and that algorithm is recalculated or rerun itself and change internally the algorithm, change the output, including new values. So that is machine learning. It starts learning and learning from each new input. It uses the standard information previously plus the new inputs and recalculate the whole process and give you another prediction. It gives you another proposition of a solution, including new values. So this is pretty much machine learning.
Okay, so let's say a smallish business, right, wants to be able to, let's focus on the sales, for instance, because it's obviously quite a common use case that small business wants to start implementing AI to get better predictions out of their sales forecast. How would a organization start that? Because the first thing I'm thinking, okay, there seems to be quite different elements. There's a data element, there's a programming element. How would you build a team, and how would you kick off a project to start that journey?
Okay, very good question. I think there are two very important pillars. The first one is a very technical pillar, which is the data. Let me focus before on the second pillar. The second pillar is you need to identify your problem. Clearly identify your problem and write it down and define the scope of the problem. It is very, very typical that in several AI projects that the scope is so ambiguous that you can lost your entire project since the very first day because it's not narrow objective. So the first advice is to identify clearly the problem. Second is to prioritize the value you are aiming to archive. or to achieve from that project. The second pillar is to understand what you're trying to solve specifically. When I mean specifically, is very, very specifically. And the first pillar, which is a very technical pillar, is in order to solve with AI a specific problem, you need data. So if you do have your data, you can solve a problem. If the data is missing or it's not complete data, you need to create data, and that make mistakes. So the two basic elements you need in order to solve any problem in a business is to identify the problem, and then with the problem identified, identify if the data you have will solve the problem. Okay. After that, after you have that, you can start building several prototypes of the solutions. And let me tell you something. You can find several solutions to the same problem from different perspectives. So that is why I say you need to prioritize value, because you can see that sometimes the answers could give you more highlights or more insights that you were expecting, and then you cannot handle that amount of answers.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, that actually. Firstly, we need to identify what is a problem we're trying to solve. So in the, let's say, talk again in the sales context, the context here is, for my business, I want more accurate sales predictions and, well, hopefully be able to identify where I should focus my business on, for example. Then the next is figure out what data do I actually have available, make sure that data is accurate. We start kicking off the project and doing some prototypes for that project. But I also heard that you need probably two different types of teams, right? One is a data person, and another person would probably be around your programming. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes, terrific. Yeah, there is great. Yeah, you need somebody from data, which is in some cases that data could be a very specific data guy, but sometimes it's more related to the business that understand the value of data from the business perspective. I always say that this is the guy that speaks business. So that $2,300, what does it mean for you or for me? Probably nothing. But from a business guy, that means particularly as a piece of answer of a question he is asking. So this is what I say from the data perspective. We need the data plus business perspective. And the other part is the technical guys, or the very advanced and in programming skills that can handle that information, the data, can manipulate it using standard algorithm or complex algorithm that depends on what kind of technology you are choosing to use.
Okay, so you could be looking at the various different types of programming guys. So either, for instance, Python. What are the other common ones that get used?
Well, as I said, you can use C++, you can use Python, you can use R, you can use MATLAB, you can use RapidMiner, but also there are some business intelligence solutions that have embedded some small programming tools. You do not need to learn those, but for instance, ClickSense or Tableau, for instance, or even more complex like IBM solutions, they have their own algorithms. AWS, Amazon has also some solutions online. Google as well, that you can start using specific algorithms from their web services. In general terms, what I'm saying is from the very beginning, from understanding the problem, defining the team, you need somebody with AI expertise, but it doesn't need to be a very high qualified guy. You need somebody to understand what is AI, what is data, and how to manipulate that. When your project is going on and growing and getting a little bit more mature, then you need to incorporate more complex teams that in some cases depends on the information you are using. If it's confidential information, it's better that you hire those resources internally. But if it's not strictly confidential and can be shared with according legal contracts signed, then you can hire services, which is a little bit a little bit more cheaper to hire some services per hour, per day, per week, per project than having one guy internally. It depends on the project, on the complex of the project. But from the very beginning, I said you need some guys with technical skills, not necessarily high qualified engineering in programming and a master in data scientist, for instance. No?
What about, okay, so you've decided on a problem you're trying to solve, right? You have an idea of what type of team you need to build to solve that problem. What about if you've got a board that's not necessarily, well, excuse the pun, but not on board, right? Is convincing the board to that you need to do this type of work. What type of challenges have you hit in the past, and how do you address those challenges?
I think the most important answer the board would like to hear or to see is how, in terms of return on investment or increasing sales or increasing efficiency, the project will contribute. So the way we can measure that, that's why at the beginning we were saying we have to prioritize the value in a way that we can measure a specific return on investment or increase in sales or direct efficiency, reduce costs, or whatever KPI, financial KPI you would like to use, is the fastest way to get an approval from a board perspective. For instance, I could talk about 3 small projects, very small projects we ran a couple of years ago. One is RPA, robot process automation. Robot process automation is a very simple and efficient way to start working with machine learning processes, not creating anything beyond that is what software already created. For instance, you can have on a monthly basis certain team of your organizations like sales or like finance or like operations. It depends on each organization. It's analyzing a lot of information and it's very boring, but they have to do it every day on a normal basis in order to get 1 or 2 outcomes. That can be automated, very simple, with a robot process automation. When a process is a continuous process, follows a pattern, it can be automated using RPA. This is a very simple, let's say, machine learning protocol process from AI that can be implemented. It's very cheap, and you have huge return on investments because sometimes you identify that several members of a team organization are investing a lot of time working on something that can be automated. Sounds very simple, but it's a fact. There is a small piece of project that can be easily sold to a board. Another one is, for instance, maintenance, repair and maintenance predictions. If you have fleets or if you have a lot of bus or cars or trucks in your business, for instance, you can start loading a lot of information into a prediction system. Very simple prediction system. It's not going to be very complicated. And you can predict when it's going to happen a failure. The problem is not to attend the failure. When you quantify how much sales you are losing because of fails, because of not delivering to products to customers or services to customers, when you quantify the amounts of losses you have because of failures, and you can predict failures, then automatically you can add those sales to your income statement. Okay, so these are kind of very simple ways to express or to sell an AI project to a board from a business perspective.
And if I'm reading between the lines, there is find those quick wins which don't require a 2-year project, and sell that quick win to the board, demonstrate what the solutions can do, and then start talking about your bigger projects and your bigger wins.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so coming back to the RPA, I'm very interested about that. So, why is an RPA project so simpler than the traditional AI project, if you want to call it that?
I would like to say that RPA projects are the translation of routinary activity or set of activities, because it could be a set of huge activities, into a single pattern that can be automated by a computer. For instance, examples of quick wins, as you said, RPAs. Call center. In a call center, you receive, let's talk about general numbers. From 100% of phone calls you receive, 70% are related, let's say, with user and password, for instance, or with balance inquiry, or very routinary question that customers would like to answer on a very fast way. And the huge proportion of the calls are related to that. Let's say in this example, 70% are related to user and password change because I miss my user and password. So what you are going to do is to automate that activity. So if you are a customer calling and you say, okay, if you are calling for a user and password reset, please press 1. And you press 1. Okay, please give me it's just an example. Give me your user ID. Okay, you will receive by email your password at this very moment. Please confirm. Thank you. And that is a very simple way to implement RPA. Internally, IPA has complex programming procedures to do that. Those programs are already developed, so it can be very, very easily to customize by almost everybody. So it's not complex. Let's say another example of RPA. You have guys from manufacturing. Let's say somebody from manufacturing has the planning programs, and they work those planning programs in Excel and send it to the sales guy. Sales guys review those plannings and put the forecast in sales, item by item, and probably there are 100 items, so they have to do it one by one, and then send it to finance, and finance will calculate or recalculate costs, margins, and some financial taxes and stuff, and item by item as well, and then send it back to manufacturing that they can review and adopt as a standard planning task for the month, for instance. You can automate that using RPA. So it's going to be very fast, reduce errors in 99%, for instance, normal human errors, and make it very quickly to solve. And it's not going to be complex. That is another example.
That's very interesting, that, because it does highlight that you really need somebody who understands. In that last example, somebody who has to understand the process from the salesperson all the way through to the finance person, which I think positions for instance, a CIO who understands those data flows in a really good position to execute on a project.
Yeah, that is fully agree. There is a very smart way of saying that is you understand the process, you make a flow of the process, and then you can see what can be automated, where can be automated, how can be automated, and then you can implement pieces of RPA in the whole process.
When we were chatting before as well, you mentioned there's a few things that's really driving the adoption of AI. What's your thoughts around that?
Well, it's quite complex because depends on the organization, depends on the business impact, depends on how you would like to achieve. We're living right now a very complex season. I was looking for the proper words, to say this pandemic situation, but everybody say pandemic, and it's so nasty to say those all the time. But I say we have important something that is called data, delivery, and decision. These are the 3 Ds in marketing: data, delivery, and decision. So in order to take advantage of this cloud economics we are living right now, or it's exploding right now, this cloud economics, or this economic using the internet or the cloud, or all the e-services, for saying in these particular words, we need to understand data, decision, and delivery, and AI projects or machine learning projects or whatever technology you are using in advanced processing of data is going to allow your business to enhance, to make it faster, and to react. There are a lot of small businesses born right now, some great entrepreneurs that are having some ideas saying, okay, imagine that we can do this using this information, because information is already there. We live in an information world. So I said again, the 3 Ds, data, delivery, and decision. If you can get data, if you can think and try to deliver something with the data. Delivery, I mean not only products, but also services, but also information. And with that, take decisions, your business is going to run quite faster. That is running now. So in general terms, not because of the pandemic we are living right now, these 3Ds can be a very good way to adopt AI in any business.
And what do you think is sort of next for AI? I mean, like you touched on RPA. Is there anything else that comes to mind? You know, whether it's technology or adoption or anything like that?
I would like to share something. From my perspective, being very honest, from my perspective, AI is overestimated. And I would like to say why. First of all, I love technology. I'm a technology guy and I love technology. Second, my daily work, my daily job is related to AI. But everybody, when somebody says artificial intelligence are the future, the answer is yes. But we need to understand perfectly what we are aiming to achieve with AI. From a business perspective, and being very honest, only from a business perspective, we don't need to invest huge tons of dollars or whatever currency you would like to use in order to implement AI projects. There are several solutions that can be adopted from the automation perspective that could transform your business. I would like to say that at the very beginning, for instance, and respect with trademarks, but Amazon or Netflix, they're using very simple AI models to suggest what to buy or what movies to see. So it's not necessarily to invest in complex programs and data scientists to understand. If you can measure the scope of your project, then you can really identify the needs. Now, not talking about business, talking about what is AI and what is going to happen. Every day we're going to have more AI solutions around us. From a very simple Alexa or Cortana or Siri, we will have more AI solutions around us. Today you can turn on your lights or turn off your lights, but in a few days you can have a whole eco-friendly systems at home that controls everything inside your home, since water, electricity, and heat, and that stuff using AI, or even your cars, or in the health business or in the health world, we can find there is a project running in some universities in US that they has already been printed hard in 3D in a 3D printer. So they already created an automated heart with electronics plus a processor, a single processor that is programming with pieces of AI, let's say deep learning processes, in order to work as your heart, but it's a piece of electronics. So that is what we are going to face. So in 1980 or probably 1990, there was a movie called The Terminator. Everybody has watched that movie. Yeah, we are reaching those times right now, but not from scientists, schools, or academic programs. We are reaching on our daily lives.
That's fascinating. And it's also such an important part, right? Obviously the heart. So yeah, that's a fascinating piece of information. Final question. If you've got a young technologist that wants to get involved in AI, what's your recommendations? How should they go about doing that, becoming an expert in AI?
Okay, first of all, I suggest to do kind of data mining, data understanding. There are several courses or trainings regarding data governance, manipulation of data, make it semantic data. I mean, first of all, they have to understand data. What is data? And how to understand that. And the second part is to understand programming from a linear perspective, like standard engineering mathematics, like regressions, like Euler models, these kind of mathematical processes for analyzing data. And you can be surprised how many problems can be solved with statistics, traditional statistics. In order to program, you need more complex mathematical experience. But if you are strong in statistical plus data, you can solve a lot of problems. So I suggest that to start understanding data mining, and statistical. Then based on what kind of problems they would like to solve, they need to specialize. It's not the same learning from imaging, AI from imaging, or AI for driving cars, self-drive cars. It's completely different way of thinking, or health or chemical solutions are different processes and different equations that they need to understand. But in general terms, starting with data and statistical, they can pretty much understand what is happening with data and how to focus and move on.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'm sort of hearing, okay, get those two first elements in place, get some experience underneath your belt, then potentially start deciding, okay, where do I want to focus on? But having those two first building blocks in place will help you get your first job, for instance, and then you can build on top of that.
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking your question. I'm a black belt certified Lean Six Sigma guy. So I got my black belt in 2010, probably 10 years ago. But the more difficult part of being a black belt is to understand process, to understand data, and to statistically find data and create a process that helps. There is the main basics of AI. Probably if somebody could have a very fast track of Lean Six Sigma understanding, could pretty much understand if they are willing to continue on that way or not.
Yeah.
Because going deep on programming, they will lose their head trying to find a purpose. And the purpose is a problem, is the solution. You're looking for a problem, not learning programming in order to, okay, I already know how to program in R or in Python. And what else? Well, you can use e-marketing on digital marketing. It's quite different of chemical solutions, for instance, and both can be solved using AI.
Fascinating. Fernando, thank you very much. That was a fascinating conversation. Well, personally, I've learned a massive amount out of that conversation. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome.
So here's what's grabbed my attention from the show. First, find a core business challenge that you need to improve first. Otherwise, you'll lose your way and spend time and resources. Second, solve a small problem first so you can build business confidence. And third, you don't need to invest heavily in developers at first. There are off-the-shelf solutions that can help in the early stages. Next, stand a chance to win a $100 gift card by telling us what actions you've taken from the show and implemented in your business. Let us know on Facebook, on Tech Leaders Talk, or leave us a voicemail on our website by clicking the little mic on the right-hand side. Over the next couple of days, we will announce the next guest via Facebook, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you for joining us.